Hi, thanks for joining us today. My name is Joe Tracy, and I am the program director with the Way Out West Coalition. And we wanted to take the opportunity to bring to you a webinar on some of our live presentations that we do. So make sure you check out the other ones in the series here as well. Today, we're actually going to be talking about the rise of fentanyl. And our reason for being here is simple and clear. We want to increase the understanding of the dangerous rise of fentanyl so we can come together to take action for our community and our kids. So Arizona has seen a spike in overdose and overdose deaths related to fentanyl in the past few years. So having this information out to the community is key in trying to bring those numbers down. Before we get started today, if you wouldn't mind to scan this QR code here and take a brief pre-survey. This is just to guess, to gauge pre-knowledge of what we're going to talk about, and then we'll do it again at the end. This is not mandatory. If you could, it helps us out with funding. So I'll give you a second here to get that going, and then we'll get right into it. All right, thank you very much for taking that pre-survey there. Like I said, that helps with funding and just to gauge how effective these programs and presentations are. Thanks for taking that pre-survey. It helps us out with gauging how effective these programs are and also with funding to bring programs like this to the community at no cost. Fentanyl is here. There is no doubt. I'm sure you've heard about it pretty much everywhere. And there's thousands of counterfeit pills that are being confiscated by police. And a lot of times they contain deadly amounts of the drug fentanyl. And it can be found across our state in any community. And those are some news stories. And then here's one of the biggest, the big recent bust that we had that had just so much fentanyl along with other drugs and weapons and guns. But you could see how big the problem this is. And with us being here in Arizona in the Valley, it is prevalent in our communities just because of our proximity to the border, because we're one of the first communities that it comes through here. So here's actually one family story of what can happen when you're faced with the deadly effects of fentanyl.
Isaiah was 15. He was in the middle of his sophomore year in high school. He just had this light about him. I get notification from a family member that there's a picture of Isaiah passed out. They're saying that he took a pill. You know, he went to go lay down and he just wouldn't get back up. We're pretty sure that your son ingested fentanyl, and they're telling me he's not gonna make it. And I just told him, like, you know, I love you no matter what. You didn't deserve this.
Learn more at talknowaz.com.
See, and hearing stories like that is why we want to make sure that we get this information out to the community. So there's not another mom that's out there grieving the loss of their child to fentanyl poisoning. And I'll discuss as we go through this the difference between actual fentanyl and fentanyl poisoning, just so you can get a little bit better understanding of that. All right, so today we're going to look at three aspects of this issue. First, we're going to take a look at what fentanyl is, and that way we have a better understanding of what the actual substance is, how big is the problem, and then what can we do about this? What can we do to take action? So there's important work that we can do together to save lives and prevent use. All right, to begin, let's take a look at what fentanyl actually is. So fentanyl is an opioid, and these may be some of the prescription opioids that you're already familiar with, like oxycodone, which is found in Oxycontin and Percocet. You also have hydrocodone, which is found in Vicodin. And then, yes, fentanyl itself, there is two forms of fentanyl. So you have the prescription fentanyl, but then you have the illegally manufactured fentanyl. So the purpose of what we're talking about today, we're going to be focusing on the illegally manufactured fentanyl. Prescription fentanyl, when they use it, a lot of times you may have had this if you've had surgery before, because it works really good for what it's intended to, under medical supervision. So they can put you down to get rid of the pain during surgery, and then they can bring it back. Again, you have an anesthesiologist there that is monitoring your vital signs and making sure everything's going good. So fentanyl itself is 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. So most of the time when you hear about fentanyl overdoses, we are talking about the illegal fentanyl. And a lot of it is sold for its heroin-like effects, and it's often added with other drugs because of its extreme potency, which makes the drugs cheaper, more powerful, more addictive, and ultimately more dangerous. So there are several different types of opioids in this class. And, we all know how powerful heroin and morphine are. And this strength is for a cause for concern, especially for our kids when we're talking about illicit fentanyl. And a lot of times it is manufactured by criminal organizations through different source chemicals, and then it's pressed into counterfeit pills most of the time. You can find it in a powder form, um, but they also do mix it then with other drugs such as meth, cocaine. They even add it to heroin to increase the potency of it. And sometimes it's done with the user's knowledge, but a lot of times it's done without the user's knowledge. Now, when it comes to illicit fentanyl, it only takes a little bit to lose a lot. So a small number of grains of fentanyl is enough to take a person's life. So the other opioid that's in the same class would be heroin, and it is in powder form and also a form called black tar. The bottom line is opioids are addictive and users can overdose, and legally manufactured fentanyl carries a higher risk of overdose and death. So what does fentanyl look like? So this is actually prescription fentanyl. You have different patches, you have lozenge, you have tablets, nasal spray, they even have suckers. Not the kind of suckers that you're probably thinking of as a kid, but there's different methods of delivery for that, and it is done in a lab, controlled conditions, and the exact amount for your body type, your weight, everything is measured out for you to by a doctor so they know how much you should take. Now, illegal fentanyl comes in a variety of different forms. Okay, a lot of times this is going to be sold on illegal drug markets, mixed with other drugs, sold as fake pills when a user thinks that they are getting what they call a lot of times you'll hear blues or M30s, which we'll talk about throughout here. A lot of times they think they're getting an actual like Oxycontin 30. That is not the case, or a Vicodin, or such as Xanax. The most common form for illegal fentanyl is in pill form. So these are some of the examples. So you have the Xanax on the left there. That is not does not have any of the medication that is in Xanax in there. That is actually a fentanyl-laced pill, and the user thinks that they're taking a Xanax, and they may have taken Xanax before and been able to handle it. They knew how it was going to affect them. Problem is when we do these pills like this, you have no idea what is in there. So most of the pills are going to be, though, in that middle one there, the M30s, the blue ones. So you'll hear them called blues, M30s. There was a trend that we did see that some of the pills were being made in different colors. They still had the M30 stamping on them, but they were trying to, I don't know, make them seem a little less dangerous. So one thing to keep in mind here is when these counterfeit pills are being illegally made, the person making the pills has no idea how much fentanyl is in each pill. And it's kind of like making chocolate chip cookies. So some cookies may have more chocolate chips than others. In this case, some of the pills may have more fentanyl than others, but the person who's taking the pill has no idea because you can't actually see the tiny bit of fentanyl that is in there. So, and it only takes a little bit to actually overdose. What are some street names? So some of the current and most common ones, like I said, M30s and blue. Those are really the big ones out there. There is a few other ones that you may see, such as Patchy, Jackpot, Murder 8, Tango and Cash. But generally, you say blues or M30s, people know what you're talking about. All right. So how are these pills used? So you can swallow them just like regular pills, okay? But also they can be crushed up and snorted. You also, they can be smoked. As mentioned in the previous slide, you saw golden trails on there. Typically, when they are smoked, they're using tin foil and a straw or a plastic pen. And as it's smoked, it'll actually leave a gold line on the tin foil. And then once you get into later stage of addiction, generally you want that the most powerful way to get it into your system, and that's going to be actually injecting it where you crush it up, you heat it up, and you actually inject it with a needle. And those are the ways of delivery there. So you can take it orally and swallow it, you can snort it, you can smoke it, and it can be injected. All right, now that we have a better understanding of what fentanyl actually is, let's take a look at why this is such a growing problem and needs urgent attention. So one reason this is happening is because the pills are coming across the border in massive amounts. The Arizona HIDTA, or the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, compiled data from law enforcement agencies over the last 2 years. And this shows the following seizures. Now, we're still waiting on all the processing for the 2024, but so you'll have 2022 and 2023 here, but you'll see this increase. So 2022, 33.3 million. It's a lot of pills. 2023, 123.4 million. That is a 270% increase in 1 year. All right. That's why it's such a problem. The fentanyl itself is very easy, very cheap to make. Okay. That is why it is such a problem here, is because it is very cheap and it's very powerful. All right, so fentanyl is here with deadly consequences. And the Arizona Pediatric Fatality Review Report for 2023 found that fentanyl itself is actually responsible for all opioid poisonings. There was a total of 34 deaths. 8 of those were children less than 5 years of age. Now, earlier I said I'd explain a little bit more what poisoning is. Generally, what's happening when we say poisoning, these kids aren't going out looking for fentanyl, especially when they're less than 5 years old. They're finding a pill that was laying around from somebody, which is truly, I mean, that's truly sad. But a lot of times what it is a teenager's curious. They go onto social media and they're connected to this whole world of drug dealers and all these things that us as adults know how to handle. Teens, they process things differently. Your brain's still developing, and you think you're invincible. And they think they're getting a Vicodin or Xanax or an actual M30. And then unknowingly, they take a fentanyl pill. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about fentanyl poisoning. Now, the good news is, I know this is a very sad, heavy subject. The good news is when we first started this, I believe we were looking at like 80 youth that had died from fentanyl poisoning. And as we've been out in schools and we've done a statewide effort to try to get information out there, we've actually seen the preliminary data for 2024. There was less than 10 deaths under 18, which is awesome. But it's still, there shouldn't be any. All right, so fentanyl is actually the #1 substance that is found in opioid overdoses, and it's found in over 70% of all the overdose deaths throughout the nation. So that's why this is so important here, is because this is the #1 drug threat that's out there. And why is this occurring? In addition to youth taking a pill that they believe is legitimate prescription, prescribed by a doctor, often they feel that using the prescription medication is less dangerous than a street drug. So what our kids often don't know is that these pills look like a prescription, but they're all counterfeits. They were not prescribed by a doctor. They don't come from a pharmacy, and they're deadly and they're dangerous. It's so important to encourage your children never to take medication that has not been prescribed to them. Pills that come from like text messages and friends or bought online at social media sites, they are fake, and they can result in serious health consequences. It's a simple message that you never know of what you're going to get, and we need to share that with all the kids that are in our life. Here's a PSA from Eden. Eden lost her brother Alex to a fake pill that was made with fentanyl.
Teens like me are dying from fentanyl poisoning. I know because I lost my brother Alex to one pill made with fentanyl. Alex didn't know the dangers of fentanyl and that one pill can kill. It can happen to anyone, and it changes everything. These pills look like they come from a pharmacy, but they don't. They're fake. Drug dealers on social media are not your friend. They take your friends. They took my brother. Don't let them take you. Fentanyl can end it all.
Again, one of those stories that just it's hard to hear, and it's sparked a lot of movement nationwide. Alex's mom, Amy, has been just she's dedicated her life to making sure that this doesn't happen to other kids. So she's worked across the nation with the government, working on with these social media apps to make sure that we can figure out a way to not expose our kids to this. All right, so what are some other things out there? And we were talking about fentanyl a little bit, so why would we talk about something else? Because another thing we're seeing is what's called tranq, and it's a street drug containing xylazine. Xylazine is a non-opioid animal tranquilizer, so it's approved through the FDA for uh, veterinary use only. So it's not approved for human use, and it's actually commonly found in combination with fentanyl, but it's been again added to other street drugs as well to increase their effects. And these combination of these chemicals increase the risk of overdose, but also uh, it causes severe, like it actually causes ulcers within the skin, and that itself is creating a whole nother problem. So you may hear it called tranq dope, the zombie drug, or Philly dope. Because it's not an opioid, naloxone or Narcan will not reverse the effects of that overdose. Now, if there is an opioid like fentanyl that's mixed in with there, it will act on that aspect of it. But if what is causing that subject to actually overdose is the xylazine, it does not help with that. But if you have Narcan, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, if you have that, please use that even if you're not sure what it is, because it will not harm them. All right, another drug threat that's out there is carfentanil. Carfentanil itself is 100 times more powerful than fentanyl. Yes, 100 times more powerful, which means, for all my math geniuses here, that's 10,000 times more potent than morphine. So it was developed to use as a tranquilizer for large mammals such as elephants. Again, it comes in it's a powder form, but you can see in those vials there how much heroin that it takes for somebody to overdose, how much fentanyl, and then that 1 grain of carfentanil. So again, using naloxone or Narcan can help, but it's so potent that it prevents a challenge for first responders and law enforcement when they're trying to administer these life-saving drugs to people that have overdosed because of how powerful it is. All right, another thing we're seeing is BTMPS. In June of 2024, we started seeing that here. It was announced by DEA agent, special agent in charge for the Phoenix area, Sherry Oz. And this chemical was starting to be introduced into the fentanyl supply because of the restrictions that were imposed by China on the precursor chemicals. So they're kind of coming up. So as we make things illegal and crack down on things, there's these chemists that work for these criminal organizations that start tweaking things to get past certain restrictions. Another thing that we're seeing is nitazines. Again, it's another synthetic opioid, more powerful than fentanyl, so it's 1,000 times more powerful than morphine. And again, it's potent and cheap to produce. Other drug threats that we're seeing are illegal online pharmacies. So during Operation Press Your Luck, they announced on Monday, September 30th, 2024, that they discovered that a U.S.-based victim had ordered what she believed to be oxycodone from an online pharmacy, only to receive a fake pill made with fentanyl. It looked identical to real oxycodone, just like many of the other stories that we hear, but it was not. It was fake, and it was made with fentanyl and filler. Days after receiving the medication, she passed away from acute fentanyl poisoning as a result of taking one of the pills that were sent to her. So we're starting to see online pharmacies pop up, and it's not only just through the dark web, which I have no idea how to get to the dark web, but if I advertise on social media, then I can send you a message that has how to get my product. So what is driving substance use? See, there's many reasons why kids and even adults are trying these substances. Every person's story is different. So for some youth, this may be simply the next thing to try. It may be teen who drinks alcohol and they vape and they heard about pills, so they wanted to try them out. They're curious. Remember what it was like to be a teenager. But also you don't know the risk of everything at that point. So they may not knowingly or sometimes knowingly consume a pill that contains fentanyl, but they're willing to take that risk. So many users use to cope with emotional stress or pain that they're feeling, or maybe it's an untreated mental health problem. So for many of these teens, it's a form of self-medicating. Stress can come from school, from family life, from friends. I mean, there's so many different things as a teen that you think is the most important thing when it's happening to you. Some teens actually start using prescription pain pills either through a prescription that was obtained legally for a doctor. So maybe they had an injury and they started using it, or maybe they started to use it recreationally. And then they started developing a tolerance and they need to find additional sources for that medication. So maybe they go on social media, maybe they reach out to dealers. And again, they don't know where that pill came from. And a lot of times it's going to look real, but it's going to contain fentanyl. All right, so is your child at higher risk? So there are certain risk factors to watch out for that may put your child at a greater risk for substance use disorder. And it is important to keep in mind that these risk factors do not determine a child's destiny. Okay, instead they provide a general gauge as the likelihood of drug use or the susceptibility to actually addiction. So understanding these risk factors is also very important when a child has already experimented with substances like alcohol and marijuana, because he or she may be more susceptible to trying opioids. So one of those would be a family history of substance use. So family history of drug or alcohol problems can place a child in an increased risk for developing an addiction to opioids. If there is a history of dependence or addiction in the family, you should let your child know that he or she is at higher risk for developing a substance use disorder. Discuss this the same way you would if there was a family history of like heart disease or diabetes or something like that. Also, undiagnosed mental health, or even if it's diagnosed mental health problems like depression, anxiety, ADHD, like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they all place a child at more risk for substance use. Now, although not all people with these disorders will develop a substance use problem, the chances are higher that they'll have difficulty regulating their thoughts and emotions. So it's a good idea to talk with your healthcare providers about the connection between mental health conditions and substance use. In substance use. So managing or treating the underlying mental health condition, or understanding how emotional and behavioral health problems can trigger or escalate a substance use problem, is very important in reducing these risks. Another thing that raises the risk factor is traumatic events. So such as like witnessing a car accident, maybe a natural disaster, being a victim to physical or sexual abuse. These have all been shown to increase the risk for substance use problems later in life. Therefore, it is important for parents to recognize the possible impact of trauma on their child and get help for their child to address the issues related to toxic stress and trauma. So we call these adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Remember, for a teenager or young person, a traumatic event may also be something like getting injured and not be able to play a sport they love, or breaking up with a boyfriend or girlfriend. So you got to remember what it was like to be a teen at one point. And then another one is impulse control difficulties. So these are all things that will increase for your risk factors for substance use disorder. All right, so implicit bias is a well-studied phenomenon, and the phrase itself refers to the unconscious attitudes we have towards groups of people, whether it's positive or negative. And these thoughts and feelings are implicit if we're unaware of them or mistaken about their nature. So it describes the automatic association people make between groups of people and stereotypes about those groups. So under certain conditions, those automatic associations can influence behavior, making people respond in a biased way, even when they're not explicitly being prejudiced. So what can we do? We can encourage people to be aware of their own bias and beliefs and educate them on the risk associated with having those biases, specifically as it relates to substance use disorder and recovery. All right, so let's talk about stigma here real quickly. So stigma is a discrimination against an identifiable group of people, place, or nation. So one of the stigmas about people with a substance use disorder, they may be inaccurate or unfounded, like they're dangerous, they're incapable of managing treatment, or it's their fault. Often unintentionally, many people still talk about addiction in a way that is stigmatizing. So when we do this, we want to make sure that we're using supporting language. Okay. So rather than somebody that's an addict, somebody with a substance use disorder, recognize your own personal biases and then, continue education and just see, because we've learned recently that addiction is an actual disease. So understanding that and what we can do, just like if somebody would have another medical condition, there's ways that we can help them along their recovery, and there's ways that would actually hurt that. So just being aware of how we're presenting ourselves around people that are going through that journey of a substance use disorder or recovery. All right, so now that we understand really what's everything is, so here's some tools and resources so that we can use to respond. So what can parents do? So some of the greatest impact on our kids comes from our families. And please note, whenever I say parents, this means anybody who cares or is in the child's life. So with the when we take a look at what we can do, one of the biggest things is making sure that we're having conversations with our kids about the dangers, not only about substance use, but specifically fentanyl, because fentanyl, you don't get a chance to mess up. It's not like when I was younger and you could make mistakes and you can experiment and just have a bad story to tell. Okay. Kids are experimenting and they're dying. All right. So 7 out of 10 never had a conversation with their parents about fentanyl. Also, 1 out of 10 of them say that fentanyl is easy or sort of easy to get. And a lot of times, if you switch the question a little bit, it'll be even easier to get. When I did a focus group with kids, I asked them about, different substances. And one of the things I asked is, hey, can you find fentanyl? And they kind of looked at me like, no, why would I do that? Then I rephrased that to, can you find me some blues? And it was, how many do you want? So making sure that kids understand that those pills that are out there are not real and they are fentanyl is key. All right, so talk early and talk often. The first place to begin is educating your kids about the deadly drug fentanyl. Ask them what they know about it. I mean, that's a good starting point. Understand what their knowledge base is, and explain that knowing about fentanyl helps keep people safe. Okay, make sure you cover all the basics with them. Okay, fentanyl is very common and it's deadly. It only takes a little to lose a lot. And then also warn them about the fake prescription pills sold online and shared at parties. Most pills that are out there now are fake. And that's how the kids need to understand is pills are fake. And really one of the biggest things you can do with your kids is establish a rescue plan. And this could be something very simple. There could be a secret text or a phrase. Maybe it's an emoji that you and your child agree on. And whenever they're in a situation, now it's our job as parents to make sure that we protect our kids. And I will be the bad person all day long to protect my kids. So if I get a text that has our code on it, I know that my child is in danger. And the way that this would go was, let's say they're hanging out with their friends and maybe somebody's passing around pills. I get a text from my son that says, hey, our little emoji that we have set up. And when I see that, I know he's in trouble. So what I'm going to do is I immediately call him. And he's standing around his friends going, oh, my dad's calling. Hey, Dad, what's up? I'm on the other line going, you did not feed the dog for the third time this week. I'm sick of you lying to me. You are grounded. Where are you at? I'm coming to get you right now. Oh, Dad, you serious? All right, well, I'm at the park, over here, so come and get me. Then he hangs up the phone, says a few choice words about how mean his dad is, but at the end of the day, he is out of that situation now. And we can have a conversation maybe about his friends, but it's very hard. You got to remember, we can say just say no all day long, but remember what it's like to be a kid. Remember what it's like to be that person that says, I don't want to do this, especially when all your friends are doing that. So if you set up a rescue plan with them, this takes all the pressure off of them, still gets them out of the situation. Another thing we can do, because so many of our teens are getting their pills and their drugs and other substances via social media, it is very important to monitor what social media sites they're on. So before they get an account, make sure they know that they need to ask your permission before joining one of the sites, and keep track of all their usernames and passwords. Set limits on how much time they can be on there. And we do have another presentation as well that we actually talk a little bit more about the social media aspect. But follow some of the things that they follow. Follow the people. This will open up conversations that you can talk to each other about what you guys are seeing online. Okay. Follow them, become friends with them on there. Okay. Part of this is them knowing that, hey, my parents are here helping me, making sure that I'm going to get through life okay. As a parent, sometimes it's difficult to parent and not be the friend. Okay, but at the end of the day, it is our responsibility to make sure they do adolescence well. Also, it's not uncommon for teams to have entire conversations via emojis. Okay, making it easy to dupe parents and to keep the true meaning of the conversations hidden. So whether your child is using words or emojis, here are some of the current ways that drugs are actually being referred to. Um, so you have the whole list there. I'm going to leave this up here. I'm not going to go through them one by one. Make sure you take a screenshot of this. And then also, here's another one as well. This one's actually from the DEA, but there's difference. The kids get very creative with what they're going to do. A lot of times when somebody's selling, you'll see a plug, because that's their plug or their hookup. So you got to remember, when kids are looking for substances, it's not like years ago when you used to have to know somebody that knew somebody that lived in a shady part of town, had to physically go there. You had to wait a few. I mean, there was a process to do that. Now, literally, from that little device in their hand, they can find what they're looking for. They can send money there, and they can have it dropped off. So what are some other ways we can help keep our kids safe? So let's say something does happen and your son or daughter needs something to manage pain. There is alternatives to opioids. Okay. You have over the counter such as like the ibuprofen, the NSAIDs, the non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs, ibuprofen like Advil, Motrin, Aleve. You have Tylenol or acetaminophen. There's different shots that you can get. It's like, cortisone shots. And then there's the physical therapy, massagers. So there's a lot of different ways to manage pain that are not opioids. When you're at home, please know that abuse of prescription medication is still occurring with our use. So it's not just the pill. So that generally a lot of times the first use will come from something that was at home. Make sure you store your prescriptions and medications in a secure location. Also, if you have medications in your home that you're no longer using, there is many locations throughout the state where you can actually drop off the medications, and they are disposed of properly. And then twice a year, every October and April, they do a DEA drug take back. You can find those as well in your community. A lot of times the police will actually partner with organizations such as ours to conduct those. And then also there is doTERRA, which is a drug deactivation system, which actually you can put your medication in there and properly dispose of it. So those are just a few of the ways, but make sure you lock it up. We like to say lock it or lose it. Okay. Because if it's there and it's accessible, they're kids. They will find a way. All right. So what does an overdose actually look like? So these are actually signs that indicate an overdose. Um, maybe they're awake but unable to talk and unresponsive to be in touch. So fentanyl itself affects the heart and lungs. Those organs slow down and weaken. And basically what happens, they just slow down to the point where you stop breathing. So a lot of times you'll hear erratic breathing leading to snoring or gurgling, maybe choking sounds, the lips and the fingernails, the skin may turn pale blue or gray, and the skin can feel clammy, cold, clammy, and sweaty. The pupils will be pinpoint. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's darkened in the room, the pupils will be very constricted. So if you ever experience a person who is, or if you ever encounter a person who's experiencing one of these effects, first thing to do is call 911. And naloxone or Narcan was actually one of the ways that you can reverse that overdose, which we'll talk about here briefly. So this is a text exchange made between two teenagers. So that was actually a text from David, and David was 14 years old, and he struggled with substance use for some time. He'd overdosed on some other drugs before. He was arrested for meth. I mean, 14, he's had a lot of life experience. But he had these pills, and he knew something was different about him, and he took one of those pills that night, and he knew that he wasn't taking a regular Percocet. And those are actually the texts that he sent to his friend there before he passed away. Now, the reason we share that with you is a lot of times you got to remember teens get scared about this stuff. Now, one of the things this teen could have done is actually called 911, but a lot of times they get scared. Okay, they don't know what to do. They don't want to get in trouble. Even though this situation here, that teen would not have gotten in trouble at all. There's that perception that something isn't right and I don't want to be a part of it. So one thing that we do is we want to teach our youth about the Good Samaritan law. So as we saw in those text posts, while a person told the young man to call his mom, it would have helped if she had dialed 911 as soon as she saw that message. So a lot of times when people are using substances or overdosing, there are other people that are present. And again, they're afraid to call for help. Okay, I've heard stories of teens that have overdosed that have literally sat there for a couple hours because people were afraid before somebody called 911. So tell your child to always call 911 if they suspect somebody is not breathing well or overdosing. The Good Samaritan law will protect those who call 911 from getting into trouble. Okay, this is really important. They should always call 911.
I'm Deborah Black. I'm here to ask for your help to save lives during this opioid crisis. Individuals who have overdosed are being left to die because those around them are afraid to call for help. Arizona's Good Samaritan law protects those who call 911 when they are present during an overdose. On behalf of law enforcement, please make that emergency call. You will not be arrested. You plus naloxone are a combination that will save lives in Arizona.
All right, so we heard about naloxone. So what is naloxone? Naloxone reverses an overdose by working to restore the breathing and the heart rate. It is a critical medicine that is used by first responders, but anyone can now get naloxone without a prescription. So in fact, Narcan, which you see here, the nasal spray form, contains naloxone and is available over the counter. Make naloxone part of your first aid kit. Don't be afraid to have this in your home. It is a life-saving medication, just like you would have an EpiPen or anything else in that first aid kit. You could find the nearest location that has naloxone by scanning the QR code. Our coalition offers free naloxone kits. So if you would like one, please reach out to us. I'll give you my contact information at the end here, and we can get that set up here for you. It is free with access. You don't access healthcare. Community coalitions have it. You can get it on Amazon. So there's a lot of different ways to get this. And it's just one of those things that will save a life. And this is actually a story from somebody who was saved by naloxone.
If this can be assistance to even the one person, that's what it's about. It's not about me. It's not about John Crow. But I did do drugs. I did overdose. I did get a second chance by the help of Narcan, paramedics, police officers. I lost nursing school. I was homeless. I had nothing. Now I have a house. I have a job. I have beautiful connections. I love the Lord. That's where I'm at now.
Naloxone saves and changes lives, and I couldn't agree more with that heading there. But I mean, think about people in our family who've maybe been affected by some sort of substance use before. Giving them that second chance at creating the life that they want is key. All right, so if your child is using opioids or counterfeit pills, okay, you may get angry, you may get disappointed, you may be fearful of the possibility of what may happen. Maybe there's guilt or shame, but don't worry, there is hope and treatment works, okay? Recovery is a process. You have to trust the process. Also, if you found that they are using opioids or fentanyl, make sure you get naloxone immediately so you have it there. To determine what the best course of action is for your child and your family, make sure you get an evaluation with a certified professional. That is a crucial step. So they're going to ask different questions, kind of see where things are at. But starting the treatment process as soon as possible is going to be key to guiding them through their recovery. Okay. You may have heard that your son or daughter needs to hit rock bottom or has to want help in order to get help, but that's not true. See, our loved ones are often interested in getting help. More importantly, that rock bottom, especially with fentanyl, could be fatal. So just stick with them. It's a process. Okay. It's going to take some work, not only on their end, but your end as well. But there is hope out there. Okay. Also, for more information regarding treatment, Arizona has a opioid assistance and referral line, or the OR line. You can access 24 hours a day. And this is a good first step if you're looking where to start. So there are 3 things to do when you're seeking treatment for a loved one is to ask questions. So not all treatment providers are created equal, and different programs have different approaches. The Partnership to End Addiction has developed a treatment ebook that identifies questions to ask a provider. So you can go to their website and ask them. Substance use disorders are chronic and reoccurring. It is important to provide continuing care. And another ebook from the partnership provides information on that topic as well. And finally, it is important for caregivers to take care of themselves. So helping a person struggle with a substance use disorder can be exhausting and overwhelming. There is a parent support network, which we'll talk more about, that can help provide ideas in that area. And then again, there's additional resources. So there's Hope and Help texting program. So the information is right on the screen there, so you can screenshot that. And then again, there is support for parents and caregivers. So there's parent coaching, offering peer-to-peer support. So talking to parents that have been through this before, what to expect, what worked, what didn't. Your coach will provide you encouragement and support. And then some more resources that are available to you as well. The naloxone AZ, the findtreatment.gov, the new meth, which we'll talk about meth in one of our other webinars that we'll have coming up here. And then the talknowaz.com website. That's for parents to be able to start that conversation. So thank you for hanging out with us. If you can, hopefully you learned a little bit here. Scan the QR code. And that'll take you to the post survey, and hopefully we've been able to give you some knowledge on that. Again, it's not mandatory you do that, but it does help with what we do. All right, I just want to thank you. Again, my name is Joe Tracy, the program director with the Way Out West Coalition. Thanks for joining us on this. We do have other webinars that will be posted here as well, so make sure to check those out. Also, there's my contact information. So if you need Narcan, you can reach out to me. Also, if you would like to set up some in-person presentations, reach out to me. We come do these free of charge for you as well. So I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day here, and thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.